This is Metro Week. Our top story, a look at how past budgeting decisions affect our taxes today. We'll talk to an economist who studies tax policy. Then our Journalists Roundtable analyzes the week's news.
Welcome to Metro Week. I'm Andrea Kelly. We've talked about it before on this show. Your property taxes are going up. Even though not all of the decisions about tax rates are final, we'll begin with a look at what we know so far. The average home in Pima County has an assessed value of about $150,000. That's the value the county assessor places on the home for tax purposes. It's based on a comparison of similar homes in your area, but it lags the market by about 2 years, so it does not reflect the amount you'd get if you sold your home today. That assessed value is what we're talking about when we discuss property values for tax purposes. The Pima County Board of Supervisors approved a tax increase of about $17 a year on the average value home in Pima County. The secondary property tax for the library district will add another $10. And then there are the city taxes. The same average homeowner who lives in Tucson will also pay another $20 in property taxes this year, plus other fee increases for public services including water. Businesses will pay more for trash service. Each school district also imposes a property tax, as well as fire districts for people who do not live in the city and other smaller taxing districts. Those jurisdictions each set their own tax rates, and those rates are scheduled for final approval in mid-August. Then the tax bills are mailed and due in the fall. For more on what got us to this point, with a balanced state budget as local governments raise taxes, I interviewed Alberta Charney. She's a senior researcher at the Economic and Business Research Center in the Eller College of Management. She has looked at 30 years of state tax policy in Arizona and says it informs our present taxes. Let's start with this. Why are property taxes as high as they are in Pima County?
They are high in Pima County compared to, say, Maricopa County because we are poor by comparison. So in Maricopa County, per capita net assessed value is about 30% higher than in Pima County.
And so you're talking about the net assessed value of the properties in
Right.
Pima County.
The wealth per capita that is taxable is about 30% higher in Maricopa County. So if we want something similar in terms of public services, in terms of soccer fields or parks or whatever we want, we're going to have to pay 30% more to start just to get there, a 30% higher tax rate.
And we should just remind viewers that that's because property taxes are based on the assessed value of a home. Lower assessed values means raising more money per home
Right.
to meet that.
Tax rate is multiplied times the net assessed value of property. And so if we have less taxable property per capita than, say, Maricopa County, you have to start with a higher tax rate to generate the same dollar per capita.
Now, we've heard from local officials that a lot of the reason that property taxes are going up in Pima County and in other jurisdictions around this area, the city or the school districts, is because of decisions the state made about its budget. Now, you've studied 30 years of tax history at the state level. What can you say about that acknowledgement or that accusation that it's the state's fault?
Well, there's so many issues involved with why taxes have been going up, and a lot of it has to do with the legislature. For one thing, they have starved school districts for 30 years. Back in the 90s, they refused to fully fund the formulas that they developed. So when it came time to funding education, they just said, we're not going to fully fund those formulas. And then in 2000, voters said, we want better schools. Here's 301 money. Here's 0.6% sales tax increase on ourselves, and it goes to schools. However, it should not substitute money already in schools. It should add to money already in schools. It shouldn't be diverted away. The old money shouldn't be diverted. And so 15 years later, somebody had to sue and say, state, you have been diverting the money that you promised you would keep in education. And the district judge has said that they owe school districts $1 billion for between 2000 and 2015, and $330 million for this year. So you keep starving schools, the burden goes back to the local school district to raise property taxes at the local level.
And that money has still not been paid to the schools at this point.
Sure, they have to substitute out for what they're not getting from the state.
What other changes did the state make in terms of where tax money was coming from or going to?
Well, they always seem to say we don't have any money, but a lot of it is based on their own decisions. They repealed the estate tax. They repealed the state property tax. They told the parent mutual betting groups that any taxes they collect from them, oh, it doesn't have to go into the general fund, you can just keep it. They diverted the vehicle license tax from the general fund and put it in roads. So a lot of things, what used to represent about 16% of our total general fund, aren't there anymore. So we're now down to just income taxes and sales, and they've cut the income tax rates 7 times since 1990. So if we don't have a lot of state money floating around, a lot of it has to do with the legislature themselves. And another reason why local property taxes go up, tax rates, is because the state legislature has changed assessment rates on businesses. So for the last 30 years, the way businesses are assessed has been changing so that they pay less property tax and it shifts some burden over to homeowners instead. So by their assessment to sales ratios dropping, we have to all pay the same tax rate in a jurisdiction, but different classes of property can be assessed differently. So at one time, mines were assessed at 60%, and now they're down to 18.5%. So when the mine assessment value falls, the total assessment is smaller, so the tax rate has to go up just to generate the same dollar.
And what is a home assessed at compared to, say, that mine?
A home is assessed at 10% of full cash value and has been like that for about 30 years. And mines at one time were 60 and now they're at 18. All business property currently is at 18.5, I should say.
And so as businesses are paying taxes on less of the property value, homeowners then are paying more money to make up the difference.
They're paying, yeah, a bigger share. Now, I can't end the story there because we also get a homeowner rebate. It's so complicated. We get a homeowner rebate, which is a share of our school taxes. And they have increased the homeowner rebate a little bit as they have diverted the tax burden from businesses to homeowners. So they've tried to mitigate that a little bit. I don't know, I can't tell you whether it's completely mitigated it or not.
So what has that meant in terms of services that are being provided as we see these changes in taxation?
It just makes it very difficult to provide services locally. You know, as I said, the state hasn't been funding schools completely, so they have to tax more. And when you start with a lower tax base, simply because we don't have the income level that they have in, say, Maricopa, then it's, you know, just that much more difficult to pay for anything that we might want locally. So we have to be willing to pay for it if we want it and recognize that the tax price is going to be higher because there's less to tax.
Is there any prospect that any of this will change? We've talked about how it has changed so far in history. What's next?
I have no idea. I'm always surprised at changes that are made. And, you know, more recently, I don't know if you're aware, but there's a 1% limit on any given homeowner that they can't pay more than 1% of the full cash value of their house. And if you live in TUSD and the city of Tucson, some people have gone over the 1% full cash value. So last year, I think it was about $18 million. So the state subsidized about $18 million. This year, the state has said, no, we're going to pay $1 million, and the rest is going to have to come out of other local government budgets. So it's going to be the county is pretty much who's going to end up paying for it.
And that's exactly the issue that Pima County has sued the state of Arizona
over. And they
over.
have sued over that issue.
And any other lawsuits that you know of regarding tax policy?
No, that one and the one about the school funding and the underfunding of schools. And I don't know quite where that is in the process, but you know, when you're looking at a past bill of $1 billion and a current bill of $330 million, I don't see the legislature making any move to cover that money. So I don't know what the penalties are. I don't know what they can be for a legislative body who aren't following the rules.
What are the voters' options at this point, or what are the taxpayers' options?
I don't know. I mean, voters have voted this group in, so I guess you'd have to vote them back out. And we've made it so difficult at the state to raise taxes at the state level because we have a 2/3 majority requirement to raise a tax. You can cut a tax with a simple majority, but you have to have 2/3 of the legislature to agree to raise a tax. So it's like a ratchet. So people are quite happy to cut taxes as, say, we were in the tech bubble before 2000. So we were getting a lot of revenues. Well, time to cut taxes. But when they cut taxes, it's a permanent cut because you can't raise them again.
And you saw that income taxes were being cut steadily in the 90s.
And then during the housing bubble, income taxes were cut again because, we're getting too many dollars. And so every time they cut them, it's a permanent cut. It can't really be undone because of the situation that the legislature set up on a 2/3 requirement. Actually, that was a referendum. The voters said it had to be a 2/3 increase, which was a huge mistake.
Thank you so much for coming in.
You're very welcome.
Wildland fires are an important part of ranching in Arizona.
If you don't burn in this country, you are going to lose your grass over time. It's just, that's the way these grasses evolve.
Now our journalist roundtable. Joining me in the studio this week are Vanessa Barchfield of Arizona Public Media, Dylan Smith of the Tucson Sentinel, and Patrick McNamara of the Arizona Daily Star. Thank you each for coming in this week. Patrick, we talked about county taxes, but I'd like to ask you to discuss another fee or rate that those of us who live in Pima County pay, and that's for sewer service. The county's considering raising those sewer rates. What's the proposal?
Well, the rates would go for the average residential ratepayer up about $3 per month under the plan that they've debated a couple times over the past few months. Board of Supervisors postponed the decision a couple of times. It should come up again at the August 12th meeting, I believe. And, it would be, the total rate for per month for residents would be about $42 under the plan. They had talked about having a similar increase for the following 2 years. That's been debated as well. And another aspect of it was the county has a reduced rate program for on a needs basis for some residents, and they were going to change that to a certain extent, and that's still another issue that's on the table. So overall, minimal amount per month change for homeowners. The difference is Pima County charges quite a bit more than most other counties or other providers do. Pima is actually the only provider of sewer service in this, as a county in the state. Mostly it's done on a municipal basis. But in Phoenix, for example, they're paying about $20 per month. So, $3 isn't a lot, but when you consider the difference that's paid here versus other parts of the state, I think it's concerning to some folks.
Any idea what's causing the delay in the vote?
Well, yeah, because they already pay. I think mostly because we're already paying so much per month that adding more on to that makes some people concerned. But part of the reason the rates are so high is the county's gone through a very extensive multi-year plan to improve the system, which was parts of it were antiquated. So they've had to borrow against the revenue, and to provide continual service and pay off debt, the rates have had to go up. And in addition, there's more capital needs that they want to meet in the future, so they've got to pay for it somehow.
How are the rates different for commercial users?
Well, I don't know directly offhand. I think that commercial rates are higher, and
It seems like for every other sort of government service, the businesses end up paying more with water.
Yeah, they generally do. And rates are determined based on an average of your January and I think early spring water bills. So if you're paying a commercial rate and you're using more water than a residential household would, it would follow that your rates would be higher throughout the year.
Do we have any indication at this point when a decision might be made on this?
Well, it's on the agenda for August 17th, I believe. I think I said it was the 12th earlier. It's the 17th, and it's been postponed 3 times, I think. So, perhaps now will be the final determiner.
Or it could also be a discussion that doesn't turn into a vote just yet again? Is that another possibility?
It could be, or the board could say they're not going to raise rates. This was a proposal that the Wastewater Commission signed off on, and that county staff has asked for the rate increase, but it's ultimately up to the Board of Supervisors to decide.
Those elected representatives who have to think about the votes.
Exactly.
All right, so moving on from tax paying to fundraising, Dylan, you covered a story that broke just today about Congresswoman Martha McSally's fundraising reports. Tell us what you found.
Well, like every other candidate, McSally needs to file with the Federal Election Commission fairly regular reports about where her money's coming from. And she's been doing that. And her numbers really don't quite add up. There are millions of dollars included in the total that she's showing to the federal officials that don't seem to be there any basis for them. She's about $3.3 million over anything that is getting actually reported as a revenue stream from either other political committees or from individual donors. And it's really not clear why these reports, they've been really wrong all year. And the FEC has been sending her campaign letters about these errors and omissions as well. Some of the reporting on individual donors' occupations and employers is not there. The majority of her donors—
And those are required.
That's the required info that they need to really try and get a hold of. And for the majority of her donors, it's just not listed. Regulators have really been, doing what they can, which is really not all that much at this point.
What happens when there are discrepancies?
Well, you get an endless series of letters, and eventually they can do an audit and even find candidates who have these sorts of problems with their reports. The FEC won't talk about anything until it's over, so it's not clear whether they are taking any more extensive action at this point beyond sending the letters with deadlines that are getting ignored. We don't know.
So could that be a fine, or?
It could be,
Yeah.
but it's just kind of up in the air where it's at in the regulatory process right now, if they are taking any compliance measures.
Has McSally's campaign staff addressed this when you've contacted them?
They have not commented. I've tried to get a hold of them a number of times, and this doesn't seem to be something that they want to talk about all that much. And it's really not clear why this error came about late last year, was the first time this really popped up, and why it's continued through all the reports since then. There's millions of bucks, and in that final total, not what she's been telling the public she's been raising, which seems fairly accurate in the money that's actually coming in, but there seems to be this sort of phantom total that's in the final column in the reports that doesn't have much of a basis.
So it's like she needs to show where each dollar comes from, and we're seeing a total that doesn't match that individual's donations.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this may well be just an error that got introduced somewhere along the way and then was compounded as they kept adding to it. And actually, in one of the reports, it kind of goes down, which is even more odd. So it'll be interesting to find out what their explanation for this is. But it's right now their reporting is so off. They're reporting that they've taken in more money that they haven't taken in than what they've actually fundraised so far in this election cycle.
So another
It's
way
more
to
than
put that is,
double.
it's more than double what they've shown
Yeah.
that they've received.
Yeah.
Or they're showing less than half of that total number.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Proving their work, I guess, for less than half.
Are these sort of errors in reporting common with
Some minor errors are certainly common, but we haven't seen, especially in southern Arizona, candidates who get this many letters from the FEC. Throughout her campaign, she's gotten 14 letters from regulators pointing out errors or omissions, things that she should go fix, and a lot of those she's not gone back and amended those reports. Throughout all of Ron Barber's campaigns, he received one letter from the FEC. Raul Grijalva's received, since 2011, he's received one letter, and in the past 10 years, I think 4 or 5.
Is this going to be a point of an available point of attack during the campaign from the other side?
It depends on what sort of explanation that the McSally campaign comes up. If they can show that somebody made an innocent mistake somewhere along the way, and go through and clear all of this up. That takes care of the issue of the totals. There's the ongoing issue from all of her races that she is not making the sort of effort that the feds expect you to make to get that employer info from your donors. And that's something that's prompted a lot of those enforcement letters that they've sent to her, that most of her donors, we don't know what they do for a living. And that's, as far as transparency goes, we're supposed to know who is giving money to political candidates.
Right, that's one of the routes to track where the money is ultimately coming from, or which industries or which types of employees are supporting either candidate in a race. Yeah. Dylan, I want to stick with you on another topic, another story that we've been covering this week. This is the months-long running investigation into illicit massage parlors that may or may not have also been doing some prostitution. This is and the implication that some Tucson Police Department and other law enforcement officers were patronizing or involved in those illicit massage parlors. So something changed this week. I want you to help us bring up to speed on this story.
Sure. There were a couple of parallel investigations going on. The Tucson Police Department was looking specifically at their officers who may have been involved in something that they probably shouldn't be involved in. And also the DPS at the state level was looking at them with a criminal investigation, not just a sort of disciplinary action that the city was taking. And the DPS gave their report to the Pima County Attorney's Office this week, and it's unclear how this might play out, whether anyone might actually face any criminal charges in this. There, the possibility of misdemeanor charges of being a John, a customer of a prostitute. I guess there were 6 TPD officers who that the DPS sent reports on to the county attorney. And there were also, coincidentally enough, 6 employees of that TPD is trying to dismiss over this.
And what do we know so far about that effort to dismiss them? Where is the Tucson Police Department in that process?
They served notice on those officers this week. 2 of them had already resigned before it got this far into the process, but there are 6 more that they told them, we're going to try and fire you, and because of the civil service issues, that's kind of going through its process. They have the right to appeal that and have a hearing, and so we don't know what the outcome of that is yet.
So still waiting that discipline and still waiting whether there will be charges filed against them or anyone in the case. Okay. And Patrick, I want to switch back to you. You had a story this past weekend about the top salaries in Pima County, but there was actually an issue that prompted you to report that story. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, yeah, the county department, finance department had built a database that was a searchable database and would show all employee salaries, year-to-date pay, and overtime to date. And they planned to release it. And at some point, it was apparently supposed to still be an internal-only site. It went live, and a link was emailed around to numerous people. I received it as well. So I opened it up and searched through it, and I learned that it would probably be taken down fairly quickly. So we scraped all the data that we could from it to save it. And in the meantime, I started asking some of the elected officials their thoughts on it, and for the most part, everyone seemed to think it was fine to release publicly. One of our supervisors, Richard Elias, was not opposed to the idea that it was public information. He just didn't think it was appropriate to post it as a database searchable on the website.
But for example, the Arizona Daily Star can take the same information and post it searchable on a website.
Sure, we could, anybody could request that individual information. The issue was they had a database and built it where they didn't have it before, so they may have been able to get a list or on our own search through everybody's individual salary and figure out what they were being paid. But they created this list, and I think part of the reason it was, or this database, and I think part of the reason it was created was they frequently do get requests for employee salaries. So this was just a way to avoid the cost and man hours of honoring those requests on an individual basis and have it on the website. It became a problem for some of the employees because they were initially told that their employee ID numbers would appear as well on the database, and that became a big issue because they felt that it would give somebody access possibly to more information about them than they would want publicly and possibly have their identities stolen. So that was taken down. But for some reason, the database was sent around and it was not supposed to be a live site, and that created some internal confusion.
Was it supposed to be a live site ever? Was the county intending on posting this for the public to look at, and they did it a little too early?
Yeah, they were. It was supposed to be initially live on July 10th, and then they postponed that date to a sort of date uncertain as of now to figure out why it was live, and maybe somebody had sent it out. They don't really know what exactly happened. They do know that nearly 600 people accessed the site while it was unintentionally live. And,
Any idea how long it was up?
I'm not sure. I think for several days at least, but I don't know exactly how long it was up. But as soon as I started asking questions and they realized the thing was out there, it was pulled down.
This is something that all of us as reporters do frequently. They ask how much somebody's paid if we're writing a story about somebody, if they're leaving their position or somebody's coming in new. We want to know how much their taxpayers are paying out for that.
Well, exactly.
It's something we do all day long. So
it's part of
For me, having that readily accessible would save the taxpayers a lot of money, actually, because they won't have to individually respond every time we want to know this. And if you work for us, if you work for the public, we have the right. That is a public record for us to know how much they're getting paid.
It doesn't seem controversial that people should know how much public employees get paid.
But it was for them.
It was for some. And there was, I think, internally for the county, there was maybe issues that HR related that it created, that people were looking at how much their coworkers got paid and maybe feeling they deserved more money, or why someone was getting paid what they were.
But that's an internal issue.
Yeah, that's their problem.
That has nothing to do with whether the public should have access to this public information.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm going to switch topics to something you've been covering this week, Vanessa, which is a couple different stories on food. First of all, we've talked a lot about downtown redevelopment, and this week the first grocery store in decades opened downtown. What's there?
I went in the other day to check it out, and I'm happy to report that it is indeed a real grocery store. There's food in it. As staples, there are fresh fruit and vegetables, there's prepared food, basically everything that you really need for your kitchen. And of course, as you mentioned, we haven't had that in downtown Tucson for a long time. There are plenty of restaurants and bars downtown, but if you live there, you always had to get into your car to go to the Food City or the Safeway, and now we have somewhere that's close by. And if you're a night owl like me and like many other people I know, it's also wonderful because it's open till midnight, so that'll make my life at least a lot easier.
How are the prices at this store?
Yeah.
You might think that having a captive market, they would be a little bit pricier. We saw over at a few blocks away at Maynard's Market, some more specialty items that were a little bit more expensive.
Yeah, I was expecting, to be honest, to walk in and be a little shocked by the prices. In the end, really wasn't. I mean, it's not priced like a specialty food store. It's I didn't do a scientific survey. This is just my casual walkthrough, but it looked like most of the prices were sort of in line with your standard Safeway or
So it's
other
a place where it's
store.
reasonable to go buy a loaf of bread and some milk and some peanut butter and the things you actually live on.
Exactly.
And also, what about the brands? Was it specialty brands of peanut butter, or was it kind of the same thing you'd find?
I mean, there was some specialty stuff, but no. I mean, it's they're not trying to be the next co-op. There you find a lot of the same things that you will get at Safeway.
It seemed like they were in the planning and construction stages for a very long time. Any indication of why it took so long?
I think these things always just take longer than expected. I mean, I know that when Rincon Market had to close due to the fire, that was also delayed significantly. So,
and we should also mention that some of the joint owners of the downtown store also own Rincon Market.
Yep.
Okay. And then also in food prices, are they selling some of the more expensive eggs that we're seeing now on the market?
They are, yeah. So I was also doing a story this week about how food prices have gone, they're down compared to this time last year. There are a few exceptions, including anything that's chicken related, of course, because of this big bird flu that's killing millions of chickens around the country. So the cost of eggs is up pretty significantly. For the last 3 months, they averaged over $3 a dozen.
And you also found that overall other prices were down, so chicken products are the issue. Exactly. All right, that's all we have time for this week. Thanks to each of you for coming in. As usual, all the stories we produce at Arizona Public Media are available on our website, and there you can also listen to stories, play a live stream from NPR 89.1, and watch past episodes of this and other TV shows. Now Arizona Week looks at fire management strategies.